Hello, everybody. We are on Module 8. In Module 8, we get to really dive into satisfaction. This is a really fun module. I think you're going to really enjoy it. When we look at satisfaction, it really is at the hub of all of intuitive eating. When we look at honoring hunger, for instance, food tastes better when we're actually hungry. We're allowed to eat it when we're not hungry, but it tastes better when we're hungry. And obviously, it's a more satisfying experience when we stop and we're full. That also feels best. And food also is obviously more satisfying and enjoyable when there's no guilt or stress with the experience of eating. And of course, the next piece that I'm talking about today with satisfaction is, well, taste and flavor and texture and what kinds of food are really satisfying to you. And why this matters is because when we really focus in on satisfaction, we satisfy our hunger. We satisfy our cravings. It kind of really helps us to end this obsession with food. I mean, how many of us with diet culture and our old dieting days, we were always obsessed with food, always thinking about food. I was always thinking about when I could eat next, because I was never, ever satisfied. If I had just eaten the thing I actually wanted to eat, boom, I'm satisfied, done, can move on with my day. All right? But really, when we're in diet culture, we don't get that experience because food is so tightly associated with guilt and restriction and so many shoulds and should nots, right? Rarely when we're in diet culture do we actually truly allow ourselves that full permission to ask ourselves what we really want, what's going to really satisfy us. I mean, in my dieting days, it was all about what should I eat? What does this plan or protocol say I should eat? It was never what do I want, right? If I went out to a restaurant, I went straight to, well, what's the quote healthiest thing I can find? And that's what I had to get on that menu. How many of you have had a similar experience with restaurants? So you see how we have robbed ourselves, a lot, right, of this experience of full satisfaction. And so with intuitive eating, we want to reclaim satisfaction so we can have these wonderful experiences with food, right? Because simply, right, when we regularly settle for unsatisfying food, we are not satisfied. And then we're just likely to continue to eat and eat and eat, or just be totally obsessed and distracted by food until we are satisfied. And what's really cool about this, you guys, is that studies show that this Epicurean eating pleasure, which is a concept that involves, ongoing appreciation with the aesthetic of food, the food's symbolic value, the pursuit of pleasure, is actually correlated to us eating smaller portions and having a higher well-being. Now, we're not trying to trick ourselves into eating less, right? But I say this because we often can think and fear, oh my gosh, if I eat the pizza, I'm never going to stop. Right, but what we've probably been already seeing throughout this whole experience is that as we make peace with food, right, and eat it more, we become empowered, and then we don't go crazy on the pizza. We stop when we're full, and so that's what we see here when we really enjoy our food, savor our food, appreciate our food. It's not associated with us eating the whole pantry, right? It's not. Because we're actually enjoying the food and we easily stop when we're satisfied and we actually get satisfied. And the higher well-being. And I believe the higher well-being is likely often coming from so much joy and relaxation and really letting go of a huge stressor that so many of us have. All right? So it's also really cool because more studies along this line show us that when we eat what is truly satisfying and pleasurable without attaching morality or having any stress or guilt around that experience, we really do experience increased physiological, right, and psychological health, right? So increased psychological and biological health. The French, for instance, who have this lifestyle, had the third lowest rate of heart disease in the world. And so truly, this is why intuitive eating, when we look at it, is really about having a healthy relationship with food. And we cannot underscore enough the importance of having a healthy relationship with food. And so that's why, you guys, every part of intuitive eating really does center around satisfaction. Just like I mentioned earlier, honoring hunger and fullness enhances satisfaction. Um, and so today now, right, we get to really dive into, well, what are the food types that I really enjoy, that I can eat with full permission without any sort of guilt? This really helps us to respect our body, because if we're craving certain things, there's likely a reason why. Whether it's simply like we're craving more sweetness in our lives, or maybe we're craving a burger because our body's like, hey, I want a ton of protein, a ton of carbs, like I need a lot right now. Okay, great. We're nourishing our bodies. Remember, every single food gives us nourishment in some way. So I want you to get curious here, and you can pause the video, and I want you to really reflect on your own journey with satisfaction. Has what I said in terms of like my own past experience in diet culture, does that resonate? What's your own unique experience? What's it like when you go to a restaurant now or in the past? Do you force yourself to pick certain items on the menu? Do you not allow yourself to choose that really rich macaroni and cheese? Do you not allow yourself to have an appetizer or a dessert perhaps? Like, what are the things for you that you're like, yeah, I don't actually allow myself to have what I really want? Or think about instances maybe when you craved one thing, but you didn't allow yourself to have it. And instead you tried to have a million little, quote, like healthier like options, but then ended up having a ton of them. Just think about your own relationship with satisfaction and how it showed up in your life. Do you feel like you regularly eat foods that are truly satisfying to you or not? So pause the video, take a moment or 5 minutes or however long, and really reflect on that. Okay, I'm going to assume that you did. All right, I'm going to assume that you actually did take the time to reflect on that. So you're really clear with what your own relationship with food has been like when it comes to satisfaction. And I get that as we step into satisfaction, it can be challenging because, for so long, diet culture has told us what we should and should not eat. That food police, that nutrition informant really come up and can be so loud when we ask this question. And so, we want to ease into this whole space of satisfaction. It's okay if at first it's like overwhelming or it can be scary, right? Embrace it all. But really what we want to do is we want to check the senses here. We want to be able to really respect our taste buds' preferences. We all have many likes and dislikes, but also remember that our taste buds change over time. I did not like black beans until like a year ago. I hated black beans, and now I really enjoy black beans. But it's funny how our tastes just absolutely change, and things that we didn't like, when we were younger, we might like now. And so it's also good to kind of try things out and actually see how you like them as you age and as your taste buds change. As intuitive eaters, you guys, we really want to be committed to choosing foods that we truly enjoy, right? Without any sort of moralistic judgment. Only you know what pleases your own taste buds, all right? Don't settle for foods you don't love. And when you do love the food, savor it. Now, of course, with all of this, there's life. And so we can't always have the most satisfying thing at our disposal. That's okay. But in general, right, we try our best to, eat foods that truly do satisfy us. So let's look at checking into our senses to help us really discover what it is we find satisfying. The first is obvious, taste. Right? And we want to think about different tastes. If you're like, what do I want to eat? Maybe you stop and consider, do I want something savory or sweet or salty, buttery, rich, bitter, tart, smoky, hot, spicy, bland, mild? Like, what are the different tastes that sound appealing to you? Maybe you even think of like a food that fits into those categories. So like, do you want pancakes that are sweeter, for breakfast? Or do you crave eggs, that are maybe more salty? What is it that sounds better to you? And you'll find your own preferences. It's hilarious, you guys. As I made peace with food, I would have told you without a doubt in my mind before my intuitive eating journey that I was a total sweet tooth. For me, I would bake cookies in order to binge. I would just eat all of the dough. I'd eat all the cookies. Oh, I'd feel sick to my stomach. I thought I was just like, I loved sweets. And now I realize I really don't like sweets that much. I just don't. It's not my preference. For breakfast, I will always choose eggs over pancakes, always. That's just my preference. And so, what are your preferences? Get curious. What tastes really good to you? What's really satisfying to you for different meal times? I love to have crunchy, saltier snacks. Like goldfish crackers are a staple in my pantry. They're satisfying when I want a little crunch. I like crunchy things, right? And so that which actually leads us into texture. So let's head into texture. Right? What sounds good texture-wise? Again, like I often for a snack like something that has like a crunch. It just to me is really satisfying, right? Or do you want like a smooth hummus? Or do you want like something that's crispy or chewy or soft or gooey or right? Like what kind of texture are you craving? If you're craving crunchy, then a smoothie will not satisfy it. But if you're craving something smooth, then, a goldfish cracker won't satisfy that, right? And so what are you craving when it comes to textures? And you might think like, oh, in the morning, I really like a smoothie. I like the smoothness of the smoothie. Where maybe you're like, yeah, no, at night, I like something that's hot, like, and more dense and heavier and chewier or something like that. So get curious, like, okay, so you start with texture, then you start with taste, then go to texture. What kind of texture are you craving? Next, we go to smell. Sometimes smell can really help us decide what it is that sounds super satisfying. We actually get so much pleasure from eating that comes from smelling, right? So smell gives us a lot of pleasure. It enhances our eating experience. When we have a decreased sense of smell, we have less pleasure when we eat. And so when you think about what smells good and really appreciating the smell of food, it really enhances our experience. And so if you're trying to think of like what sounds satisfying, maybe think about smell. We can just, without even having the food, we can think of the smell of bacon, or the smell of roasted garlic, or the smell of pizza in the oven, or hot coffee, or the smell of cinnamon or vanilla, maybe a stinky cheese, right? Or fish. So you can really, without even having the food in the room, you can smell those things. And I can kind of see, what sounds good in terms of smell. Then is temperature, which I kind of already mentioned in terms of like different meal times, right? Like at nighttime, I like to have hot things for dinner. Temperature is a biggie, but not only is it like, I want like a hotter meal for dinner, or maybe you want that cold smoothie for breakfast to wake you up. But also things like, how do you like your sandwiches? Do you like them hot or cold? I like a good hot sandwich personally. I will always choose a toasted sandwich over just a cold sandwich. I don't really like a cold sandwich, but a hot sandwich I love, right? So it totally changes the food for me. I love cold pizza the next day. What do you like, right? Or how about like different drinks? Like I like my water to have ice in it. I like ice cold water. While some people like kind of the room temperature water. What do you enjoy more? So like super hot coffee or, warm coffee? Like what are your temperature preferences? And how can we make our foods in the way that we like them best? And next one we want to think about is appearance. Funnily enough, appearance, and maybe this is obvious, but appearance actually plays a really big role on how satisfying our food experience will be. And so let's think about it like this. If you're to imagine a plate of like a poached chicken breast whose skin looks barely cooked, and it's next to steamed cauliflower and then mashed potatoes, how appealing does that meal look? It doesn't look that appealing if you ask me. It's all beige. It's just all beige. So now let's just make it little tweaks. Basically the exact same meal, but just tweaks. The chicken is now roasted golden brown. The cauliflower is now instead broccoli, right? So it's that green color. And the mashed potatoes are now sweet potatoes, right? And so we have this orange and green and golden brown. Like, which one looks better? They're essentially the same meal, right? But we can easily see that one looks much better. And there's actually a lot of studies that show us how just really appreciating how our food looks increases satisfaction, increases pleasure we get from eating a meal. And so actually when people are like taking pictures of their food, that's great because they're appreciating, oh, look how good this looks. Oh, it's so beautiful. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to eat it. It's wonderful for us to be able to actually appreciate the appearance, even the smell, all those things that goes with our food. Yeah. And the last one to think about in terms of satisfaction, you guys, is volume, right? What kind of volume? This is experience, of course, in our stomach. So what sounds satisfying volume-wise, right? Some foods are really hearty and digest slowly, like a chili, while others are lighter and digest more quickly, like a salad. And so when you're choosing what to eat, think like, do you want something that's thicker and heartier and heavier that's going to really probably then sustain you for much longer? Or do you want something that's maybe a bit lighter and won't fill you up as much? This morning, I knew I had a really busy day ahead. And so I had a really big, hearty breakfast so that I was just going to be sustained and could just go for a while without having to think about food. If I had my typical breakfast, that's just like I usually do, like say 2 eggs and some toast, very simple. That doesn't really keep me full for as long. And so I thought, okay, I want to have a heartier, heavier breakfast so that I'm going to be sustained for longer because today is really busy. I'm not going to have, as much time to break for snacks and things like that, right? And so you can consider that. Dinner, I personally enjoy having a heartier, heavier dinner. That's just me. So what do you like, right? And sometimes it's snacks. Do you like a heavy snack, a light snack? And it might depend. Like maybe you're like, oh, I'm going to go for a run later. I'm going to do some yoga later. So you're like, I don't want to eat anything heavy because, it's going to churn in my stomach, right? And so volume is another thing to consider when we play around with satisfaction. So recap of our senses to check in with when it comes to finding foods that are most satisfying. Taste, texture, aroma, appearance, and volume. And we can check those off our list and kind of say, okay, this is going to sound really good. And so what I would love for you guys to really experience and to really play with this satisfaction work is to spend time over the next, week or so. And of course, this will keep going on the rest of your life of experimenting with what foods do you find most satisfying. At first, it might take more time as you're experimenting and trying things out. But over time, it'll become much easier to regularly eat those foods that you find really satisfying. You kind of know, like, oh, I like to have eggs for breakfast. I typically like to have things like a sandwich for lunch or soup for lunch or whatever it is. I enjoy having Goldfish crackers for snacks. These are just my own examples from my own real life. So what are those things for you? Really have fun with those, okay? And of course, I want you guys to also be continuing on exploring your hunger, exploring your fullness cues, exploring those food voices. Maybe there's another food that you want to make peace with and do the making peace with food exercise. So, all of these things, they go together, right? Each next video supports the last video and so on and so forth. And so, at first we have to be very intentional with all these things. Eventually, right, when we put the work in up front, it will all become such second nature. It really does. It's like, oh yeah, of course, I'm going to check in with hunger. Oh, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. But at first, it takes the time to more intentionally do those things. I'll be excited to see when you guys, oh yeah, it's all becoming this so natural because that's what happens. That's just what happens when we really put the work in up front to be intentional with these things. So that is our video on satisfaction. I hope you enjoyed it. Cheers to enjoying really satisfying meals.